think Claire's joining. Hi.
Hi.
So funny. I feel very technologically challenged today. But the good news is that I woke up this morning and I was listening to your music and it put me in such a good mood. So
Aw.
thank you. Yeah. I was listening to some of the works from your album, A Little Death.
Hmm.
It's extraordinary. So I'm really excited about this little interview that we have going on here.
Yeah. No, I'm super excited. Thanks for doing this and for having me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, pleasure. So I wanted to start off and just say that we're really excited to have you a part of the Attune platform, this very experimental platform that we are going to be launching on Valentine's Day. Um, that's going to be absolutely incredible. But I wanted to start by talking a little bit about, your upcoming projects that you're doing. I saw that you're going to be in Vancouver, which is really fantastic. Are you originally from Vancouver or?
No, I'm originally from Winnipeg, so the right
Okay.
in the middle. Um, though I don't go back as much. I'm typically on either coast when I go back to Canada. But I like to go back to Winnipeg. But I'll be in Vancouver for the film festival that's happening. So I'm pretty
Yeah.
excited for that.
Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about the work that you're positioning for the film festival because that looks really amazing. Um, but I wanted to also say that I'm from Kelowna originally,
Oh,
in
okay,
British
okay.
Columbia. So I've gone to Winnipeg many times to go visit relatives. And, one of the unknown, you know, incredible aspects of Canadian arts and culture is the illustrators that come out of Winnipeg. And I was like a huge fan of just like the whole underground arts movement that was happening in Winnipeg. So was that influential in, your experience growing up there or your culmination to starting off as an artist?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've revisited in recent years. I don't think at the time I was living there, just because I was a kid, I wasn't super aware
Yeah.
of any of that kind of stuff. And I also grew up pretty religious, so it was like most outside, especially like underground arts and culture stuff, was not really in the kind of my periphery, or like my family was engaging with it at all.
Hmm.
Um, I've never really been interested in like where I'm from or like family lines or anything, but recently it's been something that's piqued my interest. So I've actually been kind of going back and trying to figure out like what culture was like in Winnipeg in like the 80s, 90s, 2000s,
Hmm.
to kind of contextualize like where it is I'm coming from, and if I would have stayed or if I would ever go back, um, what kind of histories I'd be interacting with.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's really interesting. But that's fun that you are relatively, or were relatively close by and visit sometimes. It's
Yeah.
an interesting place.
Yeah, it totally is. Well, the Winnipeg Ballet, and there's like different things, but it's like, it's a place that just because it gets so cold and the landscape and everything, it makes you, I feel like there's a lot of artists born from there because it's very introspective. It makes you really go inside yourself, and there's a sense of quiet that is also present there, sort of
Yeah,
like in nature. So, yeah.
yeah, definitely. Um, it's funny because I moved from Winnipeg to Texas when I moved to the States, which is literally just like a 24-hour drive south, straight down.
Hmm.
Um, so this kind of idea of being from the center of a country, like just in the middle, and
Hmm.
being like as landlocked as possible,
Yeah.
um, has kind of been something that is like one aspect of Winnipeg, as well as San Antonio, Texas, that I do draw from a lot. Um,
Hmm.
Especially because being on a coast now is extremely different. It was a huge shift and a different experience for me.
Can you talk a little bit about your field, your sound recordings? Because I'm really fascinated about your work and the different layering. And I'm curious, do you like, I imagine like the way that I've like listened to your music and the way that I've read about how your music is phrased and positioned, I imagine you like in these like moments of twilight, especially with your new album, like just like going around and like how do you make your selection of locations of where you do your field recording? Do you start with journaling and then you find yourself in a destination, or is it your backyard or like
Yeah, it kind of changes all the time. In the last probably 10 years, I've moved more than I ever have in my life. I've been a pretty like I don't really like change, and I'm
Mhm.
usually in one area for a long time. Um, so as I was kind of getting into this and this part of my practice like really started picking up and I started engaging with like field recording or even just the idea of like considering location, I was kind of this equal contributor to field recording because before I was like more invested in that kind of work. I was doing a little bit of field recording, but I wasn't necessarily like uh, the location was not the focus, which is kind of interesting for field recording. But it was kind of all sound based, and it
So you
was a
were
way
like
for
imagining like the sound of like a bubbling brook and you were like looking for that perfect location. Was that
almost like the opposite. Like
okay?
I was like I want a sound that sounds like this. It's like maybe metallic and kind of crunchy and like a lot of activity, but not necessarily loud. Um, and a long sound. And I'm like, I have no idea anything in nature that really resembles that.
Uh-huh.
Which kind of led me to realize that I really enjoy recording like domestic environments, industrial environments. I'm not like a go out in the mountains and record person. I think I have recordings of me very noticeably outdoors on like two or three things I've ever done.
Mm.
The rest of it's all been like inside of where I live, like very much an indoor kind of recording experience. So instead of
Hmm.
going macro, I'm going like super like micro to the extreme of like moving a safety pin around on a piece of paper on a desk. And
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
this is a whole thing that I can work with. Um, so it was more like trying to make sounds that I heard in my head, but I couldn't figure out how to do that. So I would go out of myself and try to find it maybe in nature, which I didn't find, and then I could find it in more like man-made areas. Um, which is also a really interesting thing with like public spaces, but also like noise pollution and just people being obsessed with like recording fidelity and like getting a clean capture of like a sound. Um, and that's all stuff that kind of fits into what I look for in a field recording practice.
Hmm. Interesting. So then once you know, you hear these sounds in your head and then you start to either manifest or discover them, like you start off with an impression and then it leads you down a road of discovery and then you do the recording. And then how does that layer into like a song or a piece?
Yeah, I do a lot of recording. It's pretty constant, maybe less constant at this very specific moment in time, just because
Sure.
I'm kind of doing a lot of other things. Um, but starting with just like a very regular practice of going out and capturing sounds or seeking out certain sounds, even if I don't
Hmm.
actually capture that or find it. The search is kind of part of it. So I have a huge, like a massive hard drive of recordings from over the years. I was actually looking at it right before I got on the call. It's like how full is this thing? I was like, oh, I have to buy another terabyte
Oh,
of
wow.
it's really
Wow.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot because sound doesn't take up that much space. So that must be like, that's excessive. That's beautiful. Do you
Yeah,
categorize them then? Like, how do you even?
sometimes
Uh-huh.
I I got this for some reason the memory card that I had, or the way that the device would kind of imprint like the date on the memory card from the recordings was
Hmm.
starting in 2014, which was like 6 years after I bought this specific recorder that I
But
use a
that's
lot.
so fun to go back and like hear your history of like
Yeah,
those, because I'm sure it's changed so much, from when you first started.
definitely. And if you're going back and sorting by date and nothing else, it's kind of almost like a game where you click on something and you're like, oh, where was this? What was I
Yeah.
doing? Who's making these sounds? But also it's kind of this thing where, you know, I have this vast library of recordings. Um, and when I need to use something in a piece, like it's always going to look for a specific sound. Or looking for a certain moment. So I'm like, oh, I had like personally like an emotional experience, or I really connected to this environment or this experience during this time of these recordings. So
Got it.
instead of going and looking for like this crunchy metallic sound, I was like, oh, I was feeling like very open to like anything. I was like, there's like this openness and this kind of like optimism. Not that there's a lot
Hmm.
of optimism in like what I do. It's usually a reflection on like the more I don't know, not darker things, but I'll look for a certain feeling that I had experienced during those recordings.
So can I read to you like what you wrote about your new album,
Yeah,
A Little Death? And I don't know who wrote it actually, to be honest, but shaped around field recordings, she captured at dusk. The album is an homage to gentle drifts and lurking disquiet of twilight.
yeah. That was that was written by Mike Boyd at the Thrill Jockey label. He really writes these amazing bios, and it starts with like these hour-long interviews that you do about the record and what you like your intentions were. Um, so I had a lot of space and time to talk about it. But the record is really based around like a specific time of day, but also like not necessarily location based. Like it's a
Hmm.
lot of things from outside or like public spaces or domestic environments, but not necessarily nature.
Did
Um,
you write it while you were in LA?
yes, but the recordings for the record started in 2021. So
Hmm.
all of the recordings that I'm using on that uh, are between 2021 and 2025.
Wow. Yeah, it's such a beautiful album, Claire. I'm like so, blown away by it. So you're going to be performing that album at Barnsdale Gallery
Yeah,
on the 24th of October.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm totally going to be there. It's going to be
awesome.
phenomenal. And then this project that you have at the film festival, you did the score for A Bloody Lady.
Yeah, it was a re soundtracking of the film because it does have an original score from the 80s. But nothing was really being done with the film for a long time.
Hmm.
So they kind of tried to have a little bit of like a public unveiling revival type thing starting in 2022. And that was when I was first approached for the project, which initially was just a one-off performance. It was not
Okay.
a longer project, and it kind of snowballed into the thing that is now, which is me traveling a lot to perform it at film festivals and doing interviews on it and having a selection of that new soundtrack like on a record and all of that.
Yeah. So are you performing it live? Or is okay, wow, that's amazing. And that's going to be October 7th at the Rio Theater, which is
Correct,
an
yeah.
awesome theater in Vancouver. So
i'm
good.
I'm so excited to go to this festival. I've been to a few film festivals to do it, um, but I've never actually really been there for more than the day that I was performing,
Hmm.
so I wasn't really able to kind of get into that mindset. And this time I have a couple days there.
Yeah.
Um, So it's going to be, I think it'll be a really special one.
Yeah, I love Vancouver. I'm jealous. I wish I could go to that one too. So I'm just going to circle back around in the last couple minutes that we have and just talk a little bit about what your interest is about Attune, because it's kind of a wild child. So you're going to be performing this project, or we're going to be positioning you for this project in the program to create something on a network which is going to reach 20 locations all across the county of Los Angeles. So how are you wrapping your head around that, and like what is of interest in that kind of architecture for you?
Yeah, so kind of I'm glad we talked about what we did beforehand because it'll kind of contextualize my interest in the project. So much of what I do is, recording and presenting music on location. And I've done a
Mhm.
few like site specific projects. I've done some installation work. I do a lot of field recording, like out and about in the field, but like location has never really been something that I've investigated because I haven't been really interested in how it works with what I do. Um, and this felt but I have been kind of gaining this like curiosity. It's been building um, about things that like a lot of site specific work, but a lot of um, like non-time based stuff like land art and things like this. So I was curious when you kind of proposed that I be part of the project because I'd never really done something across that many locations in any kind of organized way outside of like COVID doing like Zoom performances or something like that, um, which is, obviously so different from what we're going to be doing. But I never really engaged with location in in the way that it's kind of going to be happening. So that was my primary interest. I'm also really into things that are like I'm into like community art and like accessibility and doing things, especially things that are, free to the public, open to the public, events and art and performance that people, regardless of their familiarity with the artist or that kind of art form or the history behind any of that, can, you know, for lack of a better phrase, like roll up and find out.
Mhm.
So it's something that I was really interested in doing, but there'd not really been any opportunities to do something like this. So I was really excited to participate, but also to contribute a piece that is really focused on a very small musical phrase that expands. And it's kind of the idea behind it would be taking this very short recording of a piano performance, um, and manipulating it and stretching it out and doing all these things within the computer and outside the computer, like hardware electronics, to create this piece that's basically taking something super small and short and kind of stretching it out and creating this thing that is almost like in conversation with itself throughout these various forms over a longer period of time, which I think is kind of works really well for doing something that's across so many locations that are so unique.
Mhm.
So you have all these like smaller gatherings that makes up this larger kind of experience where people don't necessarily have to be in one place or the other to have an experience with this, but their experience will be different, similar to kind of like taking this musical phrase and warping it and reworking it and kind of creating it into a bunch of different forms and like
Mhm.
this thing that is both a very small experience, multiple experiences, and then also this whole kind of project.
Yeah, it's going to be extraordinary. And I love that it's experimental. And are you going to be participating in any live component during that space of
Yeah,
time?
I'm trying to figure out a good way to do it. There's a couple of things I would want to do, using like just like regular vocal microphones that could be set up, um, where people can kind of have input and while what they're saying won't necessarily come out the other end as like, yeah. But basically, somebody speaks into a microphone and it's affected and run through all of these kind of programs and processes, and it comes out the other side as actual like tonal material.
Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so it'll
That's
be
awesome
interacting.
because it takes language and it makes it universal, as
Totally.
sound. Hmm.
Yeah, and I think that something that you can put a bunch of language or voice recording into something, but it becomes less and less accessible the more that you layer so many of these things that'll be kind of not necessarily conflicting or clashing because it is a response to the musical and the tonal material, but if it can be translated into something that interacts both with the project and my original intent, but also the input from other people
Yeah.
in various locations and kind of building these unique experiences, but then kind of comes out the other side as this thing that is quite, yeah, like universal,
Yeah.
and almost like in sync with the project.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, Claire, thank you so much for doing this and joining us. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the 24th. In the
Awesome.
meantime, safe travels to Vancouver. And for
Yeah.
anyone that is going to be in the Vancouver area, don't miss the Rio's Theater performance on October 7th. I think I had Claudia putting some of the information into the chat. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Awesome.
yeah. Thank you
No,
so much.
yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, take
All right.
care. Bye.